This is Alex Mercer, known as family to his sister, a threat to Blackwatch, and a terrorist to the city. The plot calls him something much darker. As we recap the story, I want you to decide, is Alex clawing his way back to humanity, or proving he never had any in the first place?
So, we're starting off with a dead guy who's somehow everyone's worst nightmare.
Yep. The morgue really said respawn point.
Imagine waking up on a slab in the morgue, no pulse, no answers, and then walking out into the streets that look like the end of the world, only to realise that the chaos circles back to you. That's Alex Mercer's first breath after death. A moment that throws him into a New York where nothing is stable anymore. Corpses won't stay down, sirens clash with screams, and the surveillance net of an entire military branch has one new target: him. It plays like an opening scene straight out of a horror movie stitched together with a military thriller. Only Mercer isn't sure whether he's supposed to be the protagonist or the creature that the camera lingers on in the shadows. We see him stagger into the light, dazed. There's no slow acclimation, no safe corner to adjust. He leaves the dead behind and enters a city that looks alive but sick. People running in all directions while armoured trucks crawl through intersections. Helicopters thunder overhead. But instead of offering rescue, they sweep the crowds with searchlights, hunting for infection. The sense is clear. Manhattan is already past saving, and Alex is caught in the middle before he even knows what's happening. Soldiers form barricades armed with flamethrowers and rifles, but their aim isn't just the swarms or the sick, it's anyone who resists. Blackwatch steps into this nightmare with a policy that's more napalm than nuance. Their version of treatment is to burn blocks clean and call it control. We see them unload in cutscenes with precision that looks colder than the infected faces stumbling out of alleys. A tank rolls through Times Square, its cannon swiveling, not at monsters but at human crowds desperate to escape. Gunfire doesn't stop when civilians scream. To the soldiers, a scream is a symptom. For Alex, this is the first moment of clarity. The line between the infected and the innocent doesn't matter to Blackwatch, which means it can't matter to him if he wants to survive. At the same time, Alex doesn't understand why he's still standing when bullets rip through him, or why his fists can smash steel like it's cardboard with inhuman speed. These scenes don't let him adjust. They force his body to turn alien right in front of him, sprouting claws sharp enough to pierce armour, reshaping itself into disguises of the men he kills. Imagine if Frankenstein's creature could copy his creator's face. That's the level of body horror at play. He's proof that the disease doesn't just kill, it remakes. The narration we hear from him almost sounds like confession, chopped and half aware. It's fragmented like the streets he walks across, broken, unfinished, desperate to be pieced together. He remembers pain, betrayal, a company he wants to revenge on, but the details bleed out of reach. This broken voiceover sets up a revenge trip that already feels hollow, because he isn't sure he's human enough for vengeance to even matter. Is anger a choice? Or is the virus muttering its own intent through him? Those questions simmer under every cutscene, even when he's tearing through squads of soldiers like tissue paper. The beauty of these moments is how they double frame him. Watchers in the streets see a mutant cutting down squads, eyes glowing red as claws slice through metal. We, on the other hand, see him recoil in disgust, shaken by what his hands just did by reflex alone. He is both the nightmare and the shell-shocked bystander. Blackwatch guns confirm the obvious. They only see the monster. But his voiceover pushes back. He still clings to victimhood, convinced there's a truth to clear his name. A place to land if he can just recover his memory. That feeling builds with anticipation. Why is he alive when so many are dead? Why does he carry powers that none of the other infected seem to hold? His memory loss isn't just an accident. It's tied to the chaos spilling across Manhattan streets. And even Blackwatch seems to know more about it than he knows himself. Every gun barrel points his way because his existence is the outbreak's centre, not just a byproduct. These first sequences don't reveal the whole secret, but they plant the certainty that Alex isn't simply an unlucky survivor. He is the infection's epicenter with skin wrapped around it. And from that realization, the real road begins. Alex can't stumble blindly anymore. He needs identity, and in this nightmare, identity doesn't come from photo albums or family. It has to be carved into him through stolen memory. The outbreak is only the stage setter. His next step is learning who he really is, and in this city, memory is the only currency that buys answers.
Okay, so he wakes up, wrecks the city, and the military's like, shoot first, ask biohazard questions later.
Honestly, fair reaction. If I saw a guy grow claws mid-conversation, I'd call the flamethrowers too.
What if the only way to unlock your past was by devouring someone else's? That's the terrible hook that drives Alex's next phase. The outbreak outside grows worse, but inside Alex's mind, there's another kind of infection spreading. The need for answers. Survival isn't enough. Every cutscene makes it clear. Without memory, he has no meaning. But memory doesn't arrive in dreams or flashbacks. It comes through others, literally consumed piece by piece. This is where the game introduces the web of intrigue, which is basically a giant conspiracy board forced inside Alex's head. Each time he absorbs someone connected to Genetic or Blackwatch, their memories blend into him like stolen puzzle pieces. Scientists, field commanders, even grotesque creatures, they are all potential sources of information. The catch is that every scrap of knowledge is locked behind an act of violence, making the pursuit of identity as brutal as the city collapsing outside. Cutscenes drive the point home. Mercer doesn't just kill to survive, he hunts specific people who know something. Once he brings them down, we see sharp fragments, voices confessing, images of labs, whispered orders. They arrive like imperfect film reels spliced into his mind. For you as the viewer, it feels less like discovery and more like being forced a mystery. He isn't learning his story in a library, he's tearing it out of others like pages ripped from a body that used to breathe. And then comes Dana. She's his sister, but more importantly, she's the human tether Alex desperately lacks. Every time she appears in a cutscene, it reminds us that this monster-devouring strangers once had a kitchen table where they sat together. In story terms, she's less about giving him tactics and more about giving him perspective. Watching Alex, who can sprite claws the size of swords, sit across from Dana in her cluttered safe house is jarring. She worries about him, pleads with him not to lose himself, and insists he's still family. He's her brother. To everyone else, he's a nightmare that runs on rooftops. That contrast is what makes the narrative sting. You see Alex rip through soldiers in one scene, his body morphing into spikes. Then you see Dana treat him as if he's just Alex from yesterday. The game pushes you to hold both versions in your head. Is she the victim he sees when she says his name? Or is he the creature left behind when the fighting stops? Meanwhile, the web of intrigue keeps pushing him deeper into infiltration. We watch him steal the forms of Blackwatch officers, wandering into restricted labs disguised as the very people hunting him. The cutscenes lean into this, showing the identity not as a slick trickery but something uncanny. His face melts, reshapes, and suddenly the predator walks through sliding doors without resistance. These sequences work as both spectacle and horror. He doesn't just wear other lives, he inhabits them. He's the twisted genius of this design. The same mechanic players use for gameplay progression is literally the spine of the story. Memory is no longer nostalgia or reflection, it's currency, traded for survival. Every soldier pulled apart feeds Alex power, but also delivers a glimpse into the grander scheme. To advance in combat and in plot, you consume, which means the game never lets you escape the moral weight. Knowledge is violence, and the more you learn, the more monstrous you look. As more pieces slot together, it becomes clear that Alex's origin isn't what he hopes. These stolen memories hint there's rot built into his core. Names point back to experiments, engineers, and a project that reeks of intent. Alex chases these fragments convinced they'll prove he was wronged, but the story teases otherwise. Each revelation narrows the space where innocence could still live. By the time you watch him slam another commander into the ground just for a brief flash of whispered information, we understand the stakes. He's not clawing after survival anymore. He's clawing after a past that may condemn him. Dana still calls him her brother, but every violent act argues the opposite. Every cutscene underlies that the truth might strip away the last shred of humanity she's fighting to protect. So the mini payoff here is simple, but unsettling. Those body horror powers aren't just weapons. They're scavenger tools, digging up memory fragments lodged in flesh. And one by one, these fragments sketch a conspiracy wired straight through Gentech. Which means the next stage isn't about faceless soldiers in the streets. It's about the figure in the locked cell, waiting behind glass, which ties to Alex stronger than he can imagine.
So his diary is just other people's brains. His therapist is going to have a field day with that one. She isn't the cause of the outbreak. She's its echo, waiting to be released. Elizabeth Green enters the story not as a random monster, but as a name whispered inside Gentech's walls. A patient locked away because she connects directly to an older nightmare. Hope, Idaho. That backwater town was once ground zero for an experiment that spiraled out of control, and Green lived through it. Now she's been entombed like a relic, with researchers treating her less like a person and more like a bomb behind glass. When Alex finds her, the mood changes. You sense immediately that this isn't just another infected target, because Green radiates history. The virus didn't kill her, it built itself around her. Cutscenes put heavy emphasis on her framing. She's presented as both survivor and prophet, someone who's endured endless testing but refuses to die. When she speaks, she doesn't sound like a victim begging for escape. Instead, she calls herself a mother, as if nurturing something unspeakable inside her. It challenges you as a viewer. She isn't begging for freedom, but announcing a role in creation. The tone instantly reframes her from prisoner to force of nature. In every shot, the imagery lingers. White walls of containment, warning lights, and Green crouch like energy ready to burst. It creates this collision of medical imagery and myth, as if she's both patient and primordial being. When the locks break, the city feels it. Green's escape doesn't just give Alex a rival, it reshapes the battlefield. Hunters, hulking apex predators, spill into the streets as her direct offspring. They swarm civilians, smash through crossfire, and crush military hardware like toys. Mercer suddenly isn't prowling faceless soldiers anymore. He's dragged into fights that look like kaiju skirmishes in the middle of Manhattan. This is the first real escalation in the war zone, and Green is the trigger. Every cutscene emphasizes the severity. Streets buckling with chaos. Military lines shredded. Hunters tearing into tanks as if the city belonged to them. What raises the stakes further is how Green's troops ruin Mercer's tactics. Beforehand, he could hide among soldiers by stealing faces, but around Green, that rule shifts. Her detectors sniff him out instantly, no matter which disguise he's wearing. It gives the entire asylum setting this tense vibe. Like Alex isn't just sneaking in, but walking into a house where the walls themselves are watching. The cutscenes give us close-ups of her eyes tracking him, even through the chaos, as if she shares a deeper sense with him beyond masks. The gameplay threads tie neatly into this conflict. Alex gains the claw's power after grinding down a hunter, which is no accident. The story positions Green and her creatures as the next evolutionary rung of infection, and Mercer's growth is literally stolen from them. Destroy one of her chosen beasts, and his arms claw out into curved blades, ready to shred flesh and steel. Later, his mutation develops into devastating attacks, grotesque bursts of infection that turn his body into a living explosion of tendrils. The mechanics echo the theme perfectly. Alex isn't just fighting Green's forces, he's integrating them, becoming more alien the more he resists her. Each victory over her brood intensifies his drift away from the human sibling towards kin of the plague. There's also a symbolic clash in these scenes. Mercer is pitched like the lone scourge tearing through Manhattan. Green is framed as the mother figure, spawning leagues of monsters. The monster versus mother of monsters angle builds into a mythic vibe. Mercer isn't destroying infection, he's challenging the personified root of it. Even though his bloodline seems uncannily close to hers, watching their fights play out feels less like a hero versus villain and more like sibling rivalry gone cosmic, where both sides are too tainted for innocence to matter. This arc raises the unsettling question. If Green is a remnant of an earlier outbreak, what does that make Mercer? Cutscenes hint through her tone and imagery that he isn't enemy or savior, but a relative. That possibility rattles the initial framing of Alex as a victim. Instead of being attacked by an external disease, he might be a new branch from the same infected tree. Green laces every confrontation with the sense that Alex belongs to her world, not the one of the soldiers and survivors. Her release throws a shadow over every assumption about who's supposed to stop the outbreak. By the time Hunters overrun districts and Green declares herself mother, the role of savior collapses, Mercer's powers spike, his connection to infection deepens, and the city looks further from recovery. Instead of a hero gaining ground, we watch a creature refining itself amid carnage. The payoff here is clear. Green is free, the nightmare grows, and Alex's chance of redemption blur into fog. He looks less like the answers to the outbreak and more like a fellow product of the same corruption. And that leads us to the next revelation, because Green isn't the final puppeteer. Behind the locked doors of Gentech and in the cold tactics of Black Watch, there are still human masterminds pulling strings.
Yes, every story needs a creepy mother figure who calls herself the Mother.
Classic red flag energy. If someone whispers, "I am creation," run.
Just when Alex seems unstoppable, a man walks in with the tools to tear him down. Captain Cross. Black Watch calls him the Specialist. Steps onto the stage, and his arrival finally gives the military a face rather than a faceless squad. Until this point, soldiers fall like background noise, tanks explode under claws, and Alex looks untouchable. But Cross changes the rhythm. He's calm, clinical, and more dangerous in Demure than entire regiments. What makes him terrifying is not brute force, but precision. He knows what Mercer is, and unlike anyone else, he actually has the tools to break him. The first encounter sets a new tone. Instead of being swarmed by gunfire or missiles, Mercer finds himself pinned by technology designed for him alone. Cutscenes show Cross standing close, not afraid to be within a reach of a man who can split tanks, because he knows the countermeasures work. Watching him drive a syringe into Alex's neck silences that aura of invincibility. One moment Alex is this rampaging virus in human shape, the next he's paralyzed, dropped to the floor like cargo. Cross doesn't treat him as a predator or rival. He treats him as a specimen. For Alex, that's worse than bullets. For the viewer, it pulls the rug out of everything we thought and understood about power in this story. Gameplay reflects that shift in a brutally direct way when Cross injects him. Mercer's power scatter. The claws, the speed, the monstrous strength, all gone. Suddenly, you are not a walking apocalypse. You are scrambling, hiding, slipping past patrols rather than overwhelming them. Losing power doesn't just make the game harder, it narrates despair. The creature who tore the Green Hunter actions apart now runs from average squads. What's most jarring is that this feels closer to horror than to action. The story insists that being stripped of control is scarier than any monster fight. That cutscene sequence does more than humiliate Alex. It outlines how Black Watch really sees him. They don't scream in fear, they don't raise him up as a savior, they strap him down like a dangerous asset. In one moment you understand that every move they have made, every scorched earth policy, is because Alex is valuable only as a weapon. He isn't an enemy to neutralize or a man to capture, he's raw material. To Black Watch, the outbreak is not a disaster to stop, but a resource to be harvested. That explains their cruelty towards civilians. To them, every life is collateral compared to the potential of folding Mercer's biology into military power. Now Alex escapes this state with help from Rajland, a scientist who serves as something between reluctant ally and guide. Rajland is not Dana. He doesn't grind Alex in humanity. Instead, he translates the infection and the science, giving Mercer a path to rebuild himself. But the cost is brutal. To regain abilities, Alex has to absorb infected creatures and recombine the stolen viral matter into his own body. Hunters become not just enemies to kill, but fuel to survive. Absorbing supposed cures recharges him like twisted battery. Every regained power is paid for in further surrender to the virus. The irony sticks hard. Cross wanted to dehumanize Mercer, and the path forward forces Alex to lean into being less human. The game presents this as a payoff. Yes, you regain devastating abilities. Yes, the claws return. But the story leaves dread attached, because now recuperation doesn't look like recovery, it looks like assimilation. In practical terms, Mercer is embracing the very infection Blackwatch wants to harness. He's proven their point, even while resisting them. It's the same beat you see in tragic anti-hero arc, where the path to strength pulls the character further from the thing they hoped to be. Meanwhile, Cross lingers as more than just another boss figure. His presence reframes the threat. Soldiers are bodies to pile up. Green is mythic opposition, but Cross is personal. He could strip Mercer down, expose him, remind him of weakness. In a sense, Cross is the mirror Alex refuses to look into. Physical proof that power isn't constant, that memory and rage don't protect calculated force. Later, when cutscenes show him analysing Mercer's condition, we realise Blackwatch has always known more about Alex than he does himself. Their experiments defined him before he even woke up on that morgue slab. By the end of his arc, Mercer isn't who he was when he fought Green's hunters. The specialist has proven that Alex isn't immune to control, and Rajland hasn't shown that his only path back requires deeper fusion with the virus. You leave these beats with the realization that containment has nothing to do with saving New York. It's about crafting a weapon from its ashes. Blackwatch values control over cure, and Mercer's growing hunger plays right into their blueprint, whether he admits it or not. So the mini payoff here is sharp. Mercer does claw his way back to strength, but it happens not by retreating from infection, but by surrendering to it. His powers became bound to its acceptance, and he's not recovering humanity, he's maximizing monstrosity, and that sets up the true turning point. Because the bigger twist waiting ahead isn't about external enemies, it's about accepting that Mercer actually is on the inside.
So the guy finally meets someone who can actually nerf him.
And that someone shows up with the world's biggest syringe.
He didn't even blink, he just vaccinated God. Mercer's final revelation isn't about who portrayed him, it's about what he actually is. Up to this point, he's hunted Gentek scientists, shredded Blackwatch lines, and even clashed with Elizabeth Green in a battle that feels like two parts of the same nightmare colliding. Green falls, but the wreckage she leaves behind isn't victory. It's a trail leading straight back to Hope, Idaho. The shadow project that birthed her, and without a question, him. When Dana is kidnapped, the stakes move from global chaos to personal collapse. Blackwatch doesn't just want to silence Mercer. They use Dana as a way to bait him, forcing Alex to chase through cutscenes that show his most vulnerable tether. But the puzzle finally resolves when his past is unwrapped in full. At Gentek, Alex was not simply infected. He was the courier who unleashed the virus in Manhattan. Shot dead but reanimated when the contagion fused with what was left of his body. Here the final twists cut deep. Alex Mercer is not alive at all. The man we followed isn't the scientist resenting his employers. It's the virus itself, reconstructing his face, carrying his memories like clothing, and wearing them long enough to feel almost real. That detail shatters the revenge arc, because what revenge can there be when you are the weapon you swear vengeance against? Watching Mercer confront this in cutscenes, you hear his narration change. Earlier he sounded desperate, clinging to identity through fragmented monologues. Once the truth unfolds, his tone cools. The rage doesn't vanish, it transforms. He no longer fights to prove his humanity. He admits humanity was only ever a mask. His war against Gentek is no longer justice. It's the virus lashing out against its makers, tearing at the leash that attempted to bind it. This revelation pushes the city to its breaking point. On the USS Reagan, the military preps a final containment plan, and containment in Blackwatch terms doesn't mean evacuation or cure. It means destroying all of Manhattan to keep the plague boxed in by rubble and flame. You watch warships move into position, nuclear payloads armed while civilians still scream in the streets. Blackwatch doesn't flinch at the horror of their plan. For them, a city of millions is only a firewall. It's a chilling escalation because it proves that from this first cutscene in the morgue to this finale on the warship, the people in charge viewed New York as testing ground, not home. Mercer fights through this climax to stop Green's infestation from consuming everything completely, but his motives feel altered. Each line of narration builds colder. He isn't speaking as Alex Mercer, the man, anymore. He's speaking as the intelligence of the virus itself. Any talk of justice fades under the realization that he is the disease now walking and talking. You watch him acknowledge his role, not with denial, but with possession. He owns the mantle of weapon, violent and singular, detached from human morality. The tone is almost clinical in some cutscenes, as though the grief, the confusion, the pleas from Dana are just slipping behind a facade that doesn't need them. So where does that leave the central question? Monster or victim? Mercer was born from betrayal, but the end turns that framing inside out. Yes, he was manipulated by Gentek's lies, and yes, Blackwatch treated him like expendable material, but the truth lands heavier. A virus has no claim on victimhood. He is Predator wearing borrowed skin, and once stripped of that illusion, the answer leans towards monster. What makes it hit harder is that throughout the story, Mercer wanted meaning, clung to memory, fought to define himself. In the finale, he abandons that fight. Instead of struggling for redemption, he accepts becoming the very nightmare Manhattan fears. That resolution isn't simple though. Mercer saves the city from nuclear annihilation, but he saves it not as a hero reclaiming humanity. He saves it as a weapon erasing its rival, an apex predator guarding its feeding ground. The virus through Mercer speaks by action, brutal, efficient, unrepentant. And in that moment, Prototype closes not on a redemption arc, but by cementing him in a tragic anti-hero lane. One where the stronger he becomes, the further he drifts from anyone calling him brother, son, or man. The closing tone sets the table for everything that follows. Because this isn't a completed story, this is a prologue to war. The sequel picks up these themes of humanity versus power and asks who decides identity when memory belongs to the infection itself. We're left with a haunting ambiguity that frames the legacy of Alex Mercer forever. Who gets to define what he has become? The family that still clings to the man? The military that calls him the plague? Or the virus that simply calls itself alive?
Wait. So the twist is he is the virus?
Yeah, he spent the whole game trying to find himself and ended up finding me.exe.
Bro, imagine realizing you're the DLC infection that everyone is trying to uninstall. Please subscribe and click on the screen to check out more of our gaming recaps.